All right, cool. It's good to be back. Very good to be back. And so I couldn't do the call last week or 2 weeks ago. We were traveling to Puerto Rico, had a fantastic trip, and we realized it's time to get back into the note business and forget about buying hard assets for a little while until we acquire some more notes. So, kind of what I want to cover this evening is getting everybody on this call fired up about finding some assets. I'm starting to see some more things come through. That guy Vesper has sent me over some notes. Hopefully, you guys are on his list as well. If not, just go ahead and unmute and we can talk about that. Feel free to unmute at any time if there's anything that we can discuss together. I love having people ask me questions. It kind of carries the call, makes my call go a little smoother, and it makes my job a little easier. So feel free to jump in at any time. Don't even wait for me to finish the sentence. So what I wanted to cover first of all is, like I said, I'm starting to see an increase in product flow coming through, and I'm excited about that. We've got some capital to deploy. Hopefully, you all do as well. And so that's kind of the thought for this evening. And so, what I wanted to cover real quickly is let me go ahead and share my screen. Um, let's see this one. So, I had ChatGPT. I'm actually paying for chat now. So, I'm using it extensively for all kinds of different stuff from investing in Puerto Rico to I'm creating a retirement workshop, which you all are invited to participate in. And so I'm having chat create all of these workbooks and PDFs to download and PowerPoint presentations. And then I just go through and 80% of the work is done. And then I just go in and tweak it to what I think my style is and having fun with it. So I had it create for me today a note purchase sale agreement. And again, feel free to jump in with any questions, comments, or anything on what purchase and sale agreements are. I know people that have gotten crushed by note sellers in the past. Maybe some of you actually are familiar with some of the shenanigans that go on between note sellers and note investors. I'm really glad that we can all kind of team up and be on the same team when it comes to going out and buying notes. And that's why I want to kind of cover this evening in this call. What the things that I look for in a purchase and sale agreement. Now, that being said, the seller usually creates the PSA, not the buyer. So it's the buyer's job to get a copy of the PSA, purchase sale agreement, ahead of wiring. I mean, like I said, there's been a lot of things that have happened over the years. I saw a lot of people get taken, and it comes down to this document, this PSA, where things are not discussed, and attorneys are not being used. And so that's kind of what I want to cover here. So let's just go through this thing line by line, and I'll show you what Chat GPT got right and what it got wrong. First, seller name. Usually, there's going to be what I think got it wrong here. And let's just go to the end. Yeah, so it looks like it got it wrong already. So typically, You're going to have the seller as a company name, and then the seller with an LLC name. So you're going to have the president or the officer, and then you're going to have the company name, and then the same thing with the buyer. You're going to have the president, and that's going to actually be in the signature line at the end as well. So we got that wrong. So let's just add in here LLC. And then for the buyer name, this would be with the title. Oops. What did I do wrong? Seller name and then LLC and title. Position. You want to hold someone personally responsible for this. Let's see, recitals. Where a seller is a legal owner and holder of a promissory note and related documents. So that would actually desire to sell the note, terms wherein. What I always add into every purchase and sale agreement is the seller gets 45 days to review the collateral once the collateral file is received. So what does that mean? So it means that we've got this document, we signed it, the seller signs it, the seller agrees to everything on the document. Of course, the buyer agrees to it too. Any changes that need to be made are going to be made prior to wiring the funds. Everything is signed, and you don't have to get it notarized, but signed. And then if you're going to put a clause in here as well, and I'd rather do this without going through this document, I'm going to hit on all the key points that I need done. So we're going to say that if there is any legal ramifications where the seller has not provided certain things to the buyer, then there will be legal action taken in the state that the seller is located or in the state that the buyer is located. That's very important because you do not want to have things take place in California because California is so screwed up with legality stuff. So you want to have it in your state. The next thing that I think is very important is having 45 days to review the hard collateral once the folders are received. To make sure that all documents are original. If documents are not original, originals need to be provided within 45 days of discovery. That should be listed in this as well. And I'm sure that you guys can come up with other things. And I do have purchase and sale agreements that we've used in the past that I can go and pull up. But I figured this would be a good way to just start from bare bones and go through the process from the beginning. The next thing, what happens if things are not what were declared? So here in recitals, whereas seller is the legal owner and holder of the promissory note. That means the original promissory note. That's huge because if there's a copy of the note, that should have been stated in the spreadsheet that original note was lost and a copy of a note was created, or that's very important. So you want to make sure that there's wet ink on the note. Original promissory note and related loan documents described in Exhibit A attached here too. Collectively, the note, and allonges. Then and complete allonges. Perfect. Very important. Agrees to sell, assign, and transfer to buyer, and buyer agrees interest in the note for the purchase. And here you want to have a time frame. 30 days is sufficient for all recordation of assignments. Also, with assignments, purchase and sale, seller agrees to sell, assign, and then assignment. Assignments are created by the seller. Purchase price. The total purchase price of the note shall be the amount of the purchase price. Buyer shall pay the purchase price to seller by wire transfer or other immediately available funds on or before the closing date. Buyer shall pay the purchase price. Okay. Now, the purchase price is determined by the UPB, which is the unpaid principal balance, meaning that the UPB stated in the description original loan amount, and then here you want to have current UPB, and then here you want to have amount of arrears. And then because we're buying non-performing notes, we need to have a next due date and last payment made. Two different things. So the next payment due date is following the amortization schedule from the original loan amount and the original loan amount following the amortization schedule all the way up until default. And then we also need, very important, most foreclosures will not take place now without some type form of pay history. I've seen a lot of people go through a lot of grief because PNC back in the day never provided pay histories. So I used to go back and use Moneylender Professional and actually create a pay history by going to Ledger Transactions, which is this document here, and then going in and actually adding payments to the ledger transaction. So in this case, the borrower has been defaulted since 2016 with an unpaid principal balance of $64,500. And all we're seeing here is interest accrued and late fees added, $29. With no payments. That's not good enough. You need to have some type of a pay history where it says zero every month, payment zero every month. And anybody has Moneylender Professional that wants, I'm not going to get into Moneylender tonight, but with a purchase and sale agreement, pay history is mandatory. The next payment due date is following the amortization, like I said, but the last payment made, so they could have gone into default in 2016, and then somebody made a payment in 2019. Well, that doesn't bring the payment history forward to 2019, that last payment made gets applied to the amortization schedule and books that all the way back to 2016, if even that payment was accepted. Very important. Very important that these documents are discussed ahead of time in the purchase and sale agreement. Um, the amount of arrears payment, right here, you want to have all allonges, let's just say full chain of allonges. Does anybody not know what an allonge is? Everybody knows. Okay, cool. So the allonges attached to the original note. Okay. Property address, borrower's address, if different. Okay. I'll actually work on this thing even offline and send everybody a copy in the next couple of days because this is important. This is very important. Now, what this comes down to as well is pricing. The note is valid and enforceable in accordance with its terms. The note is valid transferable, and enforceable in accordance with its terms. Seller has the right to sell and transfer the note free and clear of any liens, prior attorney, invoices, or encumbrances. Okay, so you follow me? So I could have a note. I started foreclosure. I've racked up a $4,000 bill with my attorney, and then I have not paid that invoice, and then I sell the note to you, and I tell the attorney, don't chase me. I don't own this note anymore. Go chase them for the money. I don't know if the attorney would actually do that or not. I've seen notes where they have been in the middle of foreclosure and sold. Typically, the person selling the note would use some of the sale money to actually pay the attorney to let the buyer continue on with the foreclosure using that same attorney and just continue the process. There is no delay in the foreclosure. It's just a simple transfer, passing that note to the new buyer and continuing the foreclosure. That really doesn't affect the attorney most times, unless there was some type of a discovery, and that I have not seen. Buyer has conducted its own due diligence and is purchasing the note as is where is, with no additional reps or warrants except as stated herein. So, reps and warrants, this is where the rubber really meets the road and where this really needs to be scrutinized by everyone in this group, by your attorney. And like I said, most sellers already have a drawn up purchase and sale agreement that they've used maybe hundreds of times. That doesn't mean that you're just going to sign it and not really look this thing over to say, hey, listen, what if these notes are not what they were represented? And that's where the reps and warrants come in to say, listen, you told me the UPB was 38,000, and I go to find out this has happened to me once, and I didn't let it happen to me again. I think Tony was part of this sale years ago. I know he was. And we bought 54 notes, and some of the notes where the UPB was stated was actually turned out to be that was the full UPB and arrears added together. Now, most note transactions are all about the UPB and don't just, the arrears is a gift that we either negotiate with the borrower or we forgive with the borrower in most cases, some cases. But the arrears that have accumulated for the 3 years prior to us owning that note is a gift, and that is not part of the purchase price. And that is not the arrears and the UPB are two different things. The unpaid principal balance is the amortization of how much, if the loan was started at $64,500, how much of that loan has been paid down to what amount of debt. The arrears could be another 60 grand. That's not part of the purchase price. And don't let the seller trick you into saying, oh, no, no, that's total debt. We're selling these loans at total debt. Well, a lot of times you're going to find out that you can't go back 12 years and collect those arrears. It's just not part of the transaction because of statute of limitations. That's where it gets a little tricky, and that goes state by state, statute of limitations on what's collectible and how far back you can actually go. And I've had two camps, two trains of thought on that. I have one attorney saying you can't alter the pay history by saying we're only going to go back 10 years because of the statute of limitations. We have to go back the full 14 years and collect full debt. I'm like, fine, go for it. And if the borrower's attorney challenges it, then we can modify it to go back to the statute of limitations, which is 9 years or 10 years, whatever state you're in. And we've never been challenged on the balance because most people suck at math. And it's very interesting to see that and I've done it myself. When I first got into real estate, I was doing a lot of refinancing on investment properties so that I mean, the amount of equity that was building was just like what's going on now with equity building, or 5 years, 3 years ago. And so all of a sudden, a house that I bought has 60,000 of arrear of equity that wasn't there when I bought the house. So I do a refi. I get a new mortgage to pay off the old mortgage. I've never challenged the refi balance for the old mortgage, not once, until I started fooling around with Moneylender Professional. And then I realized, hey, I can calculate using my amortization schedule where we are in this loan. We took this loan out in 1999. Here it is, 2003. I've made X amount of 48 payments. My balance is $348,200.12. Why is this payoff figure for this loan that I'm refinancing out of different? Now I check. Now I check. Actually, I forgot to do that on the last refi I just did. Thinking back on what we just did a month ago. So that's all. The unpaid principal balance has to be represented correctly, and that's a huge part. Um, each party agrees to identify, defend, and hold harmless the other party for any losses, claims, or damages arising from a breach of its reps. That's crazy. That does not make sense at all. Each party agrees to hold harmless the other party. That this should be scratched, um, because a breach of its representations, warranties, or covenants is what this document is all about. So we need to be careful when we're using ChatGPT because that is a false statement. Agreement shall be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws. Okay, so that's good. He's got the laws of the state without regard to its conflict. And this would be most likely your state. So that's interesting that they have that in there. Entire agreement. This agreement constitutes the entire agreement between the parties regarding sale and purchase notes and supersedes all prior agreements or understandings. That's okay. Um, so you can see how you can really build on this thing, right, guys? Um, I know of several transactions that were completely fraudulent that and this was one trickery that somebody was using that they would say they would create a purchase and sale agreement. It was for, let's say, this guy was selling 5 loans at a clip. He had a minimum you could buy 5 loans. So 5 loans, $50,000, and then everybody was buying those 5 loans to get to the one good one. There was one really good one in those five and 4 crappy ones. And so they repped and warranted that all 5 of these loans were going to show up on your doorstep. Give me the 50 grand. And then they did a purchase and sale agreement with 10 other people with that one good loan in every package, in every sale, in every transaction. And so that's 50 loans being sold, but everybody was going after loan number one, which was the best loan. There was a full equity loan, let's say. And then everybody got, well, 10 people got their 4 loans, and the fifth loan was nowhere to be found. Now, we, as note buyers, didn't know that these other 9 people, they're transacting with these other 9 people at the same time. So there was not only me getting ripped off on the good note, but there was 9 other people or 12 other people or 6 other people that were trading at the same time, all looking for that Minnesota note, and nobody got it. Or maybe one person got it. Or maybe that note really didn't even exist, that the company just continued to keep it. That note was never even intentioned to be sold. And they did that to me once, and I stopped buying from them because I was actually brokering those 5 notes out for a friend of mine, to a friend of mine. And now he's like, that's the only loan I wanted. I'm like, well, take it up with the seller because there's nothing I can do about it. And he ended up taking it up with the seller and threatened to sue him. And so the seller gave him 3 notes to compensate for the loss. So once the wire is sent, you're at their mercy. You're at their mercy. And it's a horrible feeling to wire off 250 grand and know that now I'm at someone else's mercy, that they better give me what I want. So this document is what seals it to make sure that you have an out in case they want to screw around with you. It's very important. And so you could have five different lawyers look at this thing and just bulletproof this thing. And I saw one transaction where they said, "Yeah, you're gonna get these 10 loans," and it was verbally discussed that the seller wanted to can have 50% ownership of the deal and stay in the deal for 50%, and the seller was going to help them work through the deal. The seller is saying that's what was going to happen, but it was not in the purchase and sale agreement. So the buyer said, "Show me in a purchase and sale agreement where that was discussed." "Oh, no, that was a verbal discussion." "Give me the recording of me agreeing to give you 50% of these notes that I'm buying right now." And the guy couldn't do it. And it was, and I think it's still going on. I think it's turned into a pretty ugly battle. So there's that. So let me open this up to any questions or comments. I'd love to hear what you think about all this. Anybody?
Hey Mike. Um,
Hey, thanks, Amy.
yeah, I'm just curious because I like to read papers, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, I like to read stuff. So I'm just curious about the purchase and sale agreements that you've already used, um, and what those look like. Not necessarily, the names or whatever, but I like how it says company name, you know, of the seller or whatever, because well, it's fascinating, I guess. And it's like bookwork, you know?
I'm glad you enjoy that kind of stuff. Some I love it too. Some people hate it. It's um, when you can. I like to think of it as kind of predicting the future of, wow, that could really become a nightmare. Like someone saying, "Hey, we were supposed to retain 50% ownership," and it's like, dude, these are my notes. What are you talking about? I just gave you 150 grand, and you want $75,000 worth of these notes on a $500,000 UPB. Where did that come from? It's just, it's got to be spelled out up front. It really does. And I will dig some of those up, Amy. Um, so this is why I don't have this readily available. We were buying for the since 2016, we have been primarily buying from one bank that is literally 200 years old. And when I started working with them, there was no email. It was just fax back and forth, fax, because they were so antiquated in their systems. And that was fine because they were still giving us some great notes. And then if you look at their goodbye letter, if you look at their sale agreement, their purchase and sale agreement, it was like a half a paragraph. And they would not change a thing on it. I said, "Well, okay, so let's buy a couple of notes and see what comes." Well, the collateral files were so immaculate. They were they were perfect. They were inventoried. So the first thing that came was our assignment, their assignment to us. Then the next thing was an assignment that came from the originator to them. And then the next thing in there, and we bought over 100 notes from them, and everything was perfect. And we're like, you know what? They even had, some of them even had the loan application. The pay history was there. Every loan had a pay history. Every loan has everything that's in this purchase and sale agreement. And we're like, you know what? I don't need a bulletproof PSA with these people because these people, they're flying right. They're antiquated, but man, and I think we had over 120 notes, and I think we had a problem with like two notes, that maybe one note that we actually got our money back. You know what it was? It was because when the loan was presented to us, it was presented to us as a performing loan. And then when we looked at the documents, when the documents physically came, the borrowers were making $200 a month payment instead of $800 a month. Well, they call it a performing loan because they're not in a non-performing note business the way we are. They called that a performing loan, and I paid a lot of money for it. I'm like, no, I am not paying to handle a $200 monthly payment. What I paid, because I was looking at the original monthly payment amount, and it was just a mistake. It was not that they were trying to rip me off. They're like, yeah, it's performing, it's paying every month. Well, it's not paying what was supposed to be paying. So I think that was the only two notes that we had a problem with over 125 transactions, I think. And so that's how that went. But it's a lot different than buying a house. I know one guy who buys notes from banks, and he has his attorney at a formal closing to buy the note. Now, I don't really like that idea because, first of all, it's costly, and second of all, they could at some point, the borrower could at some point contact that attorney to discuss what that note was purchased for. And if he bought it at 40 cents on the dollar, does he have to reveal the purchase price? That's why we love the note business so much, because the borrower does not know what we paid for these things, and it's really none of their business. But when there's a property transfer, it's very easily public knowledge to say, hey, this property sold for $280,000 back in 1999, and now it's worth 645,000. You That's very easy to retrace, and so that's the story there. But yeah, Amy, I definitely will dig that up. So that's why. So my that was to for reason going through this long explanation. We have not had to exercise any purchase and sale agreement disputes because of who we were buying from. They were just so clean, just so perfect, and we got spoiled. So that's why I really haven't looked at a purchase and sale agreement since probably 2014, 10 years. So, Dave, have you bought anything from that Vesper yet?
I've put in some bids. Haven't gotten anything yet,
Okay.
but it looks like it.
Well,
Um,
so why don't you tomorrow get in touch with him and say, hey, listen, while we're in the process of possibly bidding, can you send over a copy of your PSA to review it
okay.
ahead of time?
Okay.
I advise you to do that. I advise everybody to do that. Um, and then, you can transfer, yeah, I mean, you can trade information on your wiring instructions back and forth as well. And just get prepared for, hey, let's get this thing closed. Now, what I've also seen, this is kind of scammy. We're under contract to purchase these notes. Purchase and sale agreement has been signed, and then like the last deal that I was talking about, where they were selling the same good note to all 10 different people, they give the excuse that that borrower went into bankruptcy and we're not allowed to sell a note while it's in bankruptcy. That's not a rule. That's not a law. That's a way out of selling that note because something happened. And it's usually because while they're in the process of selling that note, they got a workout or something happened and the house sold and they got a full payoff or some shenanigan happened where that note is technically mine. I paid for it. And just because you didn't get the collateral file out to me in time and that house sold, that money is mine. That that sale is mine. That full payoff is mine, and that should come to me. And I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's true story. People are not always on the up and up. But I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, Dave. But I would definitely get a hold of a PSA while you're in a process of practicing to purchase. How's that?
Sure, I'll try and do that. I've
Yeah,
had
cool.
my first two bids. One guy sold it to somebody else and didn't say anything to us.
Wait,
And
say that again.
my first bid, um, I bid 75 cents on the dollar. And he came back with, well, I want 80. And so we said, okay, we'll do that. It was a good deal. And didn't hear from him for over a week and finally wouldn't return phone calls and that. And finally, it was an individual. Finally got in touch with him. He said, oh, somebody gave me 95 cents on the dollar. So you're dealing with individuals. And then the second round of bids I did is with a bank, and they've had like 10 or 11 days and they're not getting back to us and dragging their feet on deciding who gets to buy which note. They'd like to sell it all together, not cherry picking, but they said cherry picking was allowed, so to get one from them is probably nil.
Hmm.
So I just put in a bid yesterday on two notes with the reputable seller, and I'll check with Vesper to see if I can get that, so maybe they're on the ball.
So you're going directly to Vesper's contact,
Yes.
not through Vesper.
So far I've gone through Vesper, but I'm not sure how it goes from here.
Yeah. Okay. So you may not see Vesper's PSA because this could be an individual that doesn't even know that a PSA needs to be signed.
Yeah, that could be.
So I would work that out with him up front and say, listen, are all your transactions equal or um, similar, or do we need to draw up documents every time we purchase something from you and figure out that process?
Okay.
Because paper is a lot different than actually getting a house. Um, there's a lot of things where people can BS you, and yeah, it's a different process, and I'd love to help you guys with that.
Okay. Will do.
All right. Who else? Who else has a comment on a purchase and sale agreement? Or who else has heard any shenanigans out there in the note business?
Mike, in an unrelated subject, if you want to have some fun with Distress Pro, I'm curious as to Chase Bank, what they have for non-performing paper right now.
Chase,
Yeah,
why? What have you seen? Let's
I
see.
haven't. I don't use
Oh, you don't use
distress,
it? Okay.
but
Yeah,
I just was curious as to where
sure.
they're at right now.
I love it. I love it. Mm-hmm. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
All right, good. Mhm. All right, thanks. Q1. Let's go to Q4. It's usually when banks do their most transactions is in the fourth quarter. Yep. Hey, what's going on here? Search all institutions. Mhm. Oh, search banks. Oh, they must have changed something here. That's servicers, banks. So let me just change that. I don't know if this is what's screwing me up here or not.
It looked like there was a JP Morgan link down at the bottom under the circles, right
Oh,
at the top there.
my bad. Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, anytime.
I'm like, am I losing it here? Okay, let's see what they got. Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase. First position, residential. Oh, that's a nice number. That's a B. $39 million non-accrual. Zero charge-offs. So they must have sold. They've only got 4 million of charge-offs first position. So they must have got rid of some paper. I would go and start taking a look at county records I was just in Miami-Dade today. Let me take a look here. Let's see. Do this. I'll just do J. Let's just do Chase. And assignment. Let's take a look. I'm not seeing a whole lot of things. The Chase Bank to JP Morgan Chase Bank. Interesting at that. So we got $851 million worth of HELOCs. These could actually be firsts or seconds, just so you know, folks. Commercial. Commercial real estate. What do you think, Amy?
I'm bummed they sold.
What's that?
I'm bummed they sold.
I'm assuming that's what's going
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah.
Let me change the quarter here. Q1. Oh, it's building right now. Okay. Q4 2024. But you know, when these big banks sell, they could be selling to funds that we could be buying from here. Okay, so reporting date Q4. So
Yeah,
176 million.
and like the bar chart at the end there, it was showing Q4 does have charge offs at the bottom, and then before it was displaying Q1 and it was gone.
It's
So they
gone.
definitely sold between Q4 and Q1
There you go.
reporting.
Just like here.
Yeah.
Whoa. Look at that thing falling off a cliff. That's huge. So yeah, that's the difference between Q4 and Q1, just so that we're aware here. Very interesting. So does anybody have any more questions about purchase and sale agreements or any other thing outside of what we discussed this evening? I'd like to open it up for some questions. All right, folks. Well, I hope this kind of helped you out a little bit, and hopefully we are going to start seeing some notes in the future that we can worry about purchase and sale agreements and using these type of documents. And I look forward to hearing from you anytime if you guys are out looking for banks, looking at deals. I want to get some things done this quarter, and hopefully you guys are going to keep busy.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, guys. Thanks for jumping on. Have a great one.
Good night.